So this is Scott Gamble with Gamble Productions in Columbia, Alabama, and now a new location in the Crescent City of New Orleans. The gentleman I'm about to introduce to you is probably going to be modest. He won't express and tell you everything about himself, but that's what we're going to try to do with this interview, is to pull out most of that information, because he is very, very good at what he does. I'll let him start off with his history and kind of tell you what it took about being in music from his valst, his fatherland. So without further ado, it gives me great pleasure at this time to introduce to you, and I hope I don't mess up my Swedish accent by saying Lars Edegran.
Yeah.
Did I get it right?
It's good. Yeah.
Good, good. So here's Lars.
Okay.
And I think this afternoon I'd like to start off by asking you. There's been a couple of interviews done with you here in town, and I want to kind of shy away from those and hit on a different plateau, perhaps, and give our listening audience, your listening audience, another avenue about Lars and his professionalism and what you contributed to the world of jazz and blues. So let's just start there. From what year did you start in music? Who was inspirational in your life in starting you there?
I started music, with piano lessons as a kid.
About how old?
About 7 years old.
I see.
Yeah, sort of classical piano lessons. Because my father was interested in music, and he played a little banjo and guitar. And I had other relatives that played various instruments. And so I took piano lessons probably for about maybe 3-4 years or something. I got really bored with that. I didn't really enjoy that very much. And my brother, who's 5 years older than me, he never took any lessons, but he learned to play by ear.
Wow.
And he was playing in Dixieland bands in Sweden. And they used to rehearse at our house. So I decided, well, I don't need any more piano lessons. I'm going to do like Tommy, I'm just going to start playing. Yeah.
Freelance.
Yeah, so I started, actually I started a little bit first on the guitar and the banjo. I used to sit in with his band when they were rehearsing, to learn a little bit. And then eventually I got on the piano and played with friends in the neighborhood that were also interested in jazz.
This is taking you up into your teen years then?
Yeah, well, early teens, okay. Yeah, like 12, 13, 14. And I think by the time I was 16, I was already playing in a band, a local band in Stockholm. And we started doing gigs, and we even made some recordings. And we played all over Sweden. We toured around and played. Wow. We were all in school, all of us. Most of us in the band were still in school.
Wow. So
we would play on weekends.
But you were from Stockholm?
Yeah, from Stockholm.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then we would take the train down to Gothenburg or to Malmö or Helsingborg and play in clubs or often at the universities.
Was jazz and blues big then? Or
yeah.
Which one was more over?
I think traditional jazz in general was very popular then. We used to play a lot for school dances.
No, wow.
Yeah, that was a big thing, Saturday night school dances in various schools. And later on that was taken over by rock and roll bands.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. But at that time, I would say between 1960 to 1965, those 5 years, we played a lot for kids. This was all in non-drinking establishments.
Sure.
Yeah, because liquor laws are very strict in Sweden. So yeah, we played in clubs, and but there was no drinks allowed anyway. And then I think the first time we actually played for a drinking audience was when we went to Denmark. We went on a little tour of Denmark.
How was that?
Well, they had different drinking laws than in Sweden. And they had, pubs and places like that. Where we played, and everybody was drinking beer. Basically.
Getting rowdy.
Yeah, that was the first time. And then eventually I decided to, I had left school, and I was doing some various little odd jobs around Stockholm to support myself, because I moved away from home and I was living with another musician and wasn't really doing much. And then I decided to take a little trip around Europe, hitchhiking around Europe, and I went to England and went to France, Spain, Paris, and
So you're getting a taste of other cultures' music too.
yeah, that was just, bumming around sort of. And I happened to meet somebody in Paris, an American guy, who I told that I was, interested in coming to America, because I was
Wow.
interested in blues and jazz. And so he told me that he used to work for a guy in Chicago. His name was Bob Kester, and he just recently passed away, by the way, just a few weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
And he had a record store and a record label there, sort of like this company
Sure.
called Denmark Records. So this guy who used to work for him, he told me, he said, well, Bob, he is over in Europe right now. He said, you should try to contact him.
How lucky.
And then maybe you can get a job in his store. He already got some English guys working there. So I found out where Bob was. He was actually on a tour with a blues singer, Sleepy John Estes, and they were playing in Germany. So on my way back to Sweden, I stopped over in Germany, went to the concert, and met Bob Kester.
Interesting.
Yeah, this was a pure chance sort of thing. This
Wow.
may never happen. I would still be in Sweden.
Yeah,
But
sure.
so yeah, but pure chance. And he said, yeah, you can. I can arrange for you to come and work for me, and so in those days it was fairly easy to get a visa to come to America.
Right.
Yeah, the immigration laws changed shortly after that. So I was sort of lucky. I was at the time when there was a quota system, and the European countries had a fairly high quota, how many they would take in per year. So I had Bob write me a letter, offer me the job, and then I went to the American Embassy in Stockholm and said I wanted to go. I have a job waiting for me. I have a sponsor. Because you had to have a sponsor to be responsible for you. You wouldn't be a burden of the state, so called. And so with that, I got a visa, and I took off.
Wonderful.
I took off, and he was in Chicago. So I took off to Chicago. I flew into New York, took a Greyhound bus to Chicago. That's in March 1965. And I arrived there, and I met Bob. I started working in his store and packing records, because he used to do all the mail orders.
Sure. Yeah.
Similar to this company. And I worked there for maybe about 6 months, not that long. And I was underage. I was 20, and in Chicago you had to be 21 to go to the clubs. So I couldn't go to any of the jazz clubs. They were all downtown. But I could go to all the blues clubs on the south side and on the west side.
Interesting.
Because they would actually let people in. And there wasn't many white people going to those places. It was kind of rare that you see any white faces in there. It was mostly black people. This is before the blues was sort of discovered by the white audiences.
Sure.
So people like Buddy Guy, who is now very famous,
Yeah,
who
sure.
plays all the festival, he was playing in a little dive there, sort of like Fritzl's on Bourbon Street.
Imagine
With a
how
small bar.
transitions like that is
Yeah.
unbelievable.
So I would go to all those places, and I heard lots of great blues. Howlin' Wolf, Muddy Waters, Buddy Guy, Otis Rush, all kinds of people.
Oh,
It was
wow.
really a great experience. I heard Lightning Hopkins there too, Son House, all kinds of people.
Man,
That was really great, but I got to
unbelievable.
meet some of the jazz guys, but I couldn't go to the clubs.
Sure.
They were very strict. So I decided, well, I'm going to take a little trip down to New Orleans. So I hitchhiked down to New Orleans in August 1965. And I came down here. This was right before we had the great big storm down here called Betsy.
Oh, I remember that.
That was a
Sure.
huge one. That was the biggest one until Katrina.
Yeah.
Right. So that did a lot of damage. And I've only been here a few weeks when it hit.
Oh, no.
And I was staying in the French Quarter, which wasn't really hit by it. Very, very minor, but it was a different storm from Katrina. It wasn't flooding so much. It was flooding in some areas, but it was a lot of wind damage. You know?
Makes you think, did I make the right move coming
Yeah,
to
no.
New Orleans?
So I got a job working on, I didn't know anybody in New Orleans. I got a job working on roofs, repairing roofs.
Oh, wow.
Cleaning up streets and stuff. Yeah, you did all kind of
Sure,
manual
you
labor.
did anything you could.
Yeah, I did that manual labor for, maybe almost a whole year before I got to know people here and get into the music scene.
Sure.
And I went, as soon as I got down here, I went down to Preservation Hall to check that out because I knew about Preservation Hall. I had recordings and, these people. And so I got to meet Alll Jaffe there. And,
wow.
And I got to meet some of the musicians. This was really great. And we used to hang out there, it was me and a few other guys from Europe actually that was here doing the same thing as me. And we would hang out at Dixieland Hall or at Preservation Hall almost every night. Just listen to music, It was really great. And then I started getting little jobs actually playing the clarinet in the brass bands. My first gigs was in brass bands. And I played in brass bands quite a bit, and eventually I started getting enough jobs I could give up my other job, my labor job. Yeah, that didn't take too long.
I was going to ask, that didn't take too long once they
No, it didn't
started
take long
hearing
at
you
all.
play.
And also it was so cheap living in New Orleans in those days. And me and another musician, we shared an apartment on Royal Street in the French Quarter. I think our rent was like $60 a month.
Wow.
Yeah, and you could go to Buster's, which is one of our favorite restaurants in the French Quarter on Bourbon Street. And we would go there and you could get a meal for a couple of dollars.
Wow.
Yeah, so
that's a couple $100.
Yeah, so now if I went to work on the roof for a couple of days, I could take the rest of the week off.
Sure.
I had enough money to get by, so I didn't have to work very hard. It was just a great time in New Orleans.
Yeah.
So, but eventually I got, into more being a professional musician, and that started sort of like, I think around 1967, 68. I started getting.
Were you playing any guitar? Your
Yes.
favorite loves?
Yeah,
Time?
I started playing guitar in the dance halls here.
Oh,
they had
wow.
one uptown called Munster's Bar, and they had a dance band who played every Saturday night. I started playing guitar there.
So clarinet and guitar, you had two things behind you.
And then I started, I also did a little bit of work at the Tulane Jazz Archive. Because I got to meet Dick Allen, who was the curator there. He was in the French Quarter. And I got a part-time job up there too, which was better than working in houses.
Sure.
Indoor job.
Anything.
Yeah, it was nice. And then I had the chance to do a lot of research up there. Because they had a lot of sheet music and recording. So I got a chance to do that while I was working up there. And that was really good.
That was a plus.
That's what got me started with the New Orleans Ragtime Orchestra.
Oh,
because at Tulane they had lots of ragtime arrangements, thousands of them. And I decided, this was back in 1967, I decided I want to try to play some of this music. Nobody was playing it. This is before the Sting,
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So the ragtime wasn't really that popular, especially not with bands. It was popular as a solo piano, but not with orchestras. So we decided we're going to try to play some of this music and see what it sounds like. And so I got some guys together, and we would get together at Preservation Hall in the afternoon and rehearse.
What a great idea.
Yeah, so we got
beginning of something, obviously.
Yeah, that was beginning of something, and some friends of mine came to town here that had a small record label called Pearl Records. They were out from North Carolina. They used to come down here regular, two guys, Sonny Baggett and Leonard Brackett. And they both passed away. Leonard Brackett quite a few years ago. But Sonny just died. He was just 90. He was about to turn 91. He was living in the French Quarter. He just passed away.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they gave me my first break, those guys. Yeah, they gave me my first break on the recording. And so I got they said, well, they liked the idea of the ragtime orchestra. So they said, well, let's see if you can record, maybe you can record your rehearsals, he said. So we would have rehearsals either at the hall or at Paul Crawford, the trumpet player, at his house. And we had a little tape recorder and we would record the rehearsals. And then we picked out the best stuff, and we had Pearl Records put it out on the record.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that led to more recordings and more activity and eventually getting jobs.
Sure, yeah.
When we played at the first jazz festival, which was 1970, with the Ragtime Orchestra. Then we all started getting jobs touring as well. Alll and Jeff booked us on tours around the United States. We played at the Newport Festival, which was a big thing. We got a lot of great reviews out of that. Then we even did tours in Europe. But I'm kind of ahead of the story now, because lots of other things happened there. Because I also did a recording before the Ragtime Orchestra. My first recording was in 1966. I only been there a year.
Wow.
And that was for, what record was that? That was for Center Records, which was run by Leonard Brackett out of Salisbury, North Carolina. And that was my only time to record with George Lewis, because he died shortly after that.
Wow.
So that was with George Lewis, Dee Pierce, Tim Robinson.
I don't know how you keep
That's
all
a
the
very
names
nice,
in your mind.
That was my first
Really?
chance, sort of, to make recordings with those old guys.
Sure.
And then, in the later in the 60s, in 1968, I think it was, I started playing at another dance hall called Lutjens, which is in the Bywater area. The building is still there, but it closed down. We were like the last band to play there, because they closed down around 1970. So we played there for 2 years, every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Wow.
Yeah, it was an interesting place. It was actually a segregated place.
Really?
One of the last, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
But to get around the law, they made it a private club.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was illegal to be segregated.
Yeah, sure.
But so we played in there. I had like an international band in there. It was me and another Swede who also came to New Orleans a year later, Orange Kelly, me on clarinet, and I had a Japanese guy on trumpet who lived here for a few years. And then I had 2 American guys, a drummer and an old trombone player. So we played there every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for dancing.
You had just enough instruments to make it work. You didn't.
It was 3 horns and piano and drums, and then sometimes the trumpet player's wife would play banjo with us too.
I often wondered about that.
So anyway, so that job lasted 2 years, and it was a very educational job, because we played for old people, mostly in 60s on up, and everything we played was a request. So
oh wow!
Yeah, and so we had to learn a lot of songs.
Sure, you did.
Yeah, so, and they asked for waltzes and rumbas and all kinds of stuff.
Sure.
A lot of non-jazz stuff, but we played it in the jazz way. A lot of waltzes. And they were very picky about the tempos and everything. They complained to the band if you played too fast or too slow.
Sure.
Yeah, so it was a very learning experience. So fortunately, I had bought this music box. They call them fake books. It has like 1,000 songs in it. And I bought one for the piano and one for the trumpet, which is a B-flat book. So that if somebody come up and requests a song, I look in the index and I tell the trumpet player what page it's on. He'll dig it out.
You're both on the same page.
And
No pun intended.
And we just play it. We play any song they ask for, as long as we had the music to it.
Sure, yeah.
So we were able to play just about everything they asked for.
Oh my goodness.
So it was great. So that was a real nice experience. And you really learn the tempos too. To play for dancing, you got to play the right tempos, and that was a good learning experience. And from that on, when that job finished, Orange Kelly managed to get our first job on Bourbon Street.
Wow.
Yeah, the first job we played there was in a place called The Cabin, which was right across the street from Pete Fountain's Club, which used to be on Bourbon, somewhere around St. Anne Street. And it was one of those like midnight jobs. It starts at midnight and it goes to like 4 or 5
o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, and it was a place, we played with a little trio in there, just piano, drums and clarinet. And people from the other gigs would come by afterwards when they knock off from that gig, so it'll turn into jam sessions.
Yeah,
you know?
jam sessions.
Yeah, it was nice. It didn't last that long, that job, but then Orange got a regular job, a full-time job on Bourbon Street at the place called Maison Bourbon, which is still there now. And that was, I think it was 1970. That club had just opened then. It was brand new. And he's got the afternoon gig there, which was from 12 to 6 with a 4-piece band. It was hard work, I tell you, for 6 hours with a small band.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So it's piano and drums, clarinet and trumpet.
I don't know how you did it.
Yeah, it was hard work, but we were so young, you know, we could handle it. So, and they had a small kind of like upright piano. So we played there for about a year or so. And then I got an offer to play in another club, and we all moved around. Orange stayed there longer than me. I moved on to the Paddock Lounge. It's one of the oldest clubs in
You remember these?
Not there anymore.
You remember
That
those
goes way
clubs,
back
just
to
like
the 1930s. And I played in there with Thomas Jefferson and Wallace Davenport, 2 trumpet players. They had, one had the afternoon shift, and other night shifts. So I sometimes played in the afternoon, sometimes at night. And then I played also at Famous Door and several other clubs. So I did that for a long time, I think almost the entire 1970s.
wow.
I was fully employed, played every day. Sometimes played afternoon and at night, the 2 jobs a day.
And I think our listening audience needs to know that if you had these jobs, people just didn't have several instruments up there. They like we said earlier,
Yeah.
they picked what they needed.
Oh, yeah.
And if you hadn't been as good as you were, then then somebody may have taken your place. But if you were in these slots the whole time, then I think you did very well for yourself.
Yeah, I did fine. And I find out, you know, when I went to play, Lars and I, we knew each other very well, and we knew our repertoire, so that was very easy for us to play together. But sometimes you get thrown into a band when they don't know you that well, and they don't know what you know.
Right.
You don't know what they
know.
So
Right.
that happened with me, especially with Thomas Jefferson, because he was the kind of guy that he would never tell the band anything what he's going to play. He just started playing, and then you have to try to figure out what he's playing. You know.
Yeah, sure.
And sometimes, most of the time, it would be a song that you know. There was no problem. But once in a while, he would hit a song that you never heard of, and just scrambling trying to
You're
figure
trying to
out.
follow.
Yeah, he's scrambling to figure out what the chords are, you know. And I learned the hard way. But, you know, once that happened to you, you find out the name of the song and you go home and learn it. So you won't be able to pull that on you next time.
That's right.
So he was a bit brutal like that he expected you to play anything you played, you know. But he was a great trumpet player too, so I wouldn't knock him, you know. He was a great player. It was my fault not knowing the song, you know. But I quickly learned all the songs, and then so stayed on Bourbon Street all that time. And also during that period, the 1970s, both Orange and I organized band and to tour. So I had the ragtime orchestra. Orange organized the New Orleans Joymakers, which was sort of a band based on Preservation Hall type of musicians. And we did a number of tours in Europe with those groups. We did a couple of tours with the ragtime orchestra and 3 tours with the Joymakers, 3 or 4. And started out, first time we had Percy Humphrey in the band, and Louis Nelson, Louis Barbering, Father Al Lewis. It was a really great band, just as artists. First year was that band, and the next year we couldn't get Percy, so we had Kit Thomas on trumpet. And the last year we had Ernie Cagnolati, another trumpet player. And that was very successful. We toured all over Europe. We went like for a whole month.
Wow.
Whole month. We went to Scandinavia, went to England, went to the continent.
Wow.
That was really great tours, and we made lots of recordings with them. So all that's happened all during the 1970s, so it was a very busy time
Sure it
between
was for
tours
you.
and working on Bourbon Street. And I also started playing at Preservation Hall then.
Wow.
Not full time, but I would play that quite regular. And then in 1978, Coach Orange and I started working with a show here in New Orleans, a Vaudeville Show. We had never been involved in theater before.
Wow.
That was just it happened because this fellow, Bernal Barnieris, a Creole guy here in New Orleans, who was involved in theater, he got to know us. And he used to come to our gigs, especially with the ragtime orchestra, because he liked our trumpet player, Ronald Phillips, he liked his singing, you know. And so he used to come and hear us. And he came up with this idea of making this 1920s vaudeville show.
Wow.
And it was based on the Lyric Theater in New Orleans, which was in the 1920s. It was a theater that had all the great singers like Bessie Smith, Ma Rainey, Ethel Waters. They all come to New Orleans and perform at the Lyric Theater. And so he had some relatives that apparently worked there. So he was interviewing them and he found out a lot about it. And he wrote a play about it.
Wow.
And then he asked us to put the music together for it. We had never done anything like that.
Which was probably more a task than easy.
Yeah, there was quite different. We hadn't really worked with these, and there was 3 female singers, and then him, the male singer. Then it was another person that was like the theater owner. That was another role. So we haven't really worked with female singers very much. We didn't know much about it. And so he wanted, so the show was basically a night at the Lyric Theater. And it was presented so that the audience would sit and they would see the backstage. That's one section of the stage where the performers are before they come on stage, and then the actual stage. And on the stage is also the band. It's not in the pit. It's an on-stage band. There's a small band, a 5-piece band. It was 5 of the guys out of the ragtime orchestra, and because we needed reading musicians, so we got that together. So it was trumpet, clarinet, piano, drums, and instead of a string bass that we had in the ragtime orchestra, we used a tuba to make it more like a 1920s sound. Yeah. Okay, so then we started putting music together, and the music was going to be blues-oriented and also 1920s up-tempo happy songs or even comedy songs. So I did a lot of research on it. I had a lot of big record collection, you know, 1920s music. So I picked out the songs pretty much, and then we decided what are we going to do with the songs, who's going to sing what, and what key we're going to be in, because female singers are different from male singers, you know, so it's a different keys. And what songs are going to be solo songs and what songs are going to be group songs. So there's some songs going to be duets and some going to be the entire cast singing together. And then you have to arrange all the vocal parts. Fortunately, I didn't know anything about, I know how to arrange music. I learned to arrange music from the ragtime orchestra by using those orchestrations at Tulane. I analyzed them and figured out how do you write music for these different instruments. So by analyzing that, I was able to figure out how it all works. And because I knew the clarinet, and I know a little bit about the trumpet, I knew the fingering, and I knew the range of the instruments. I knew what each instrument can do. So that was a big help. And the big help we had with the vocals was this lady that is still around, Topsy Chapman, who sings here at Encore. She was one of the ladies in the show, and she had a gospel group. So she knew how to put music together for singers, you know. But she didn't know how to write music. So I had to sit down with her, and she gave me all the parts, and I'll write them all out. So because I needed it for, in case we get replacements, you know, because she taught all the girls what parts to sing. But then I needed to know what they were, so that when the next group comes in, which we ended up doing, we ended up having several companies. I need to be able to teach them. So she showed me all the parts. I wrote them all out, and then we had rehearsals. You know, of the band. First we had separate band rehearsals, which Orange pretty much took care of, and I would do the vocal rehearsals in my kitchen.
How did that go?
It went really well because Topsy was really on the ball. She really knew exactly what to do with the vocal parts. She was very strict, you know. She knew exactly what to do, and she wouldn't allow anybody to do anything differently. So that was very good. That was a great learning experience. And then Thais Clark, who was still around, was also in the show. She was a very good dancer. She was also in Topsy's gospel group, and she came up with some of the comedy type of dancing, and she was really
Not a great
really
history
good at that.
there.
Yeah, so Vanel got a lot from the girls, and then he came up with the script for the whole thing, tie it all together, and it turned out to be a great show. We started out performing it here in New Orleans. We did at Xavier University and a couple of places around town. And then we got a sort of regular gig at the place called the Toulouse Theater, which is now called One Eye Jack. It's on Toulouse Street. And that was like a movie theater. So they had movie theater seating and a small stage, very small stage. There was really no dressing rooms, hardly, because behind the curtain, you dress behind the curtain. So we put the show on there, and it was a big hit, actually.
Wow.
It was very popular. And the show was great. I mean, we really enjoyed it. We had a ball performing the show. You know, it was so brand new to us. It was like totally new experience. And the girls were great, and everything was great. So we really enjoyed it. And then Vanel got an offer to go to New York with the show.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. That was in 1979. And they actually wanted him to bring the cast, but use a New York band.
Yeah.
Because it would be cheaper for them, you know.
Sure.
But he stood his ground there. He said, no, I gotta have the band, you know. And me and Orange, we were sharing the music. We were musical directors too, you know, so we were really involved in the show. So anyways, we all of us went to New York, the whole cast and the whole band.
Wow.
I closed up my apartment in the French Quarter, put my stuff in the storage, put my records up at Tulin archive, and we took off. And we didn't know how long we were going to be there because it could have been a flop. You know, we could have been home in a month's time. So we went and we opened up at the Village Gate, which is like a very large off-Broadway theater, almost 500 seats. New York, the whole company moves to New York, stays in a hotel, and works at the Village Gate. And the whole band stays there, with the exception of the drummer and the tuba player. They decided they only want to stay for like a month or so. They agreed to stay so that we could get the reviews, which is the important part. So they stayed for that. And then they moved back, and then we hired local musicians in New York for those two instruments.
Sure.
And so we got great reviews, so the show stayed there for a number of years.
Wow.
And I didn't stay there so long. I stayed in New York actually for 5 years, but I didn't stay at the Village Gate all that time because once the show became successful, we got offers for other jobs with the show. We got offers to go on the road trips, and work in other cities in other countries. So we ended up, the big job that we went to, and the entire cast went to, was in London. We all went to London.
Wow.
And we had a replacement cast at the Village Gate, and the whole band and the cast went to London in West End, which is sort of like Broadway. So we were there for quite a long time, over a year, and the musicians weren't all allowed to stay that long because of musicians' union rules. We had to eventually ease out and replace it with British musicians because of the rules they have between Broadway and West End.
Right.
Yeah. So, but anyway, that was a big smash hit that too, which ended up as going to Australia from that same promoter in England. He had a connection in Australia, so one company went to Australia. I didn't play in that company. I just went up with a training session, which was a couple of weeks. Went for a couple of weeks, trained the singers. Some of the singers was one or two that was already in the show, and the rest of them were new people from New York. And so I get them trained, and then they were very successful there in both in Sydney and in Melbourne. And the next training job I went on was in Canada, Toronto, to put a company together for that. And then we put the company together for a national tour in the United States. And I didn't tour with it either. We just got it started and sent them off. And that was New Orleans, some New Orleans people and some New York people involved in that.
So how long did the show go?
Well, it went for almost 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I went to...
a big hit then.
We did a big European tour also. That was the real big one. We went all over in Europe. That was a very nice job too. And so then after that, after 5 years in New York, I decided to move back to New Orleans. I did work on some other shows while I was there. There was several other shows that never really took off, but they were, they did workshops, and then they weren't picked up. One was for Broadway show, and anyways, they spent a lot of money on the workshop. We were hired to put it all together, and then in the end, no promoter picked it up. That was just a wash.
Wow.
Yeah, but we all got paid for that. So I did that, I did several shows like that, and then I decided I didn't really want to continue in theater. I wanted to go back and play jazz, man.
Jazz.
Yeah, because in the show, it's very monotonous. You play the same show eight times a week.
Yeah.
And you can't really improvise too much because you have to follow the routine of the singers and the dancers. So you're kind of limited what you can do. Everything is pretty much set, So I did play some gigs while I was in New York too, but we played some gigs in some clubs while we were there because the show would end at 10 o'clock at night. And so then we would go and do other gigs sometimes, or on that night off.
2 wee hours of the morning.
Yeah, then we go, we have one night off, I think it was Mondays, then we go and play a gig somewhere. So we did do some other things. But then I decided I was just going to come back to New Orleans. Right before I left New Orleans, I just bought a house. Actually, I didn't even move in. I bought a house from Canal Boulevard in Lakeview. I was still living in the French Quarter, and then I got the offer to go. I already bought the house, so I just ended up renting it out. And then when I came back to New Orleans, I moved into that house. And I started working in New Orleans. Just picked up where I left off, really, in a way.
Wow.
I came back and started working, playing around town. And I haven't been back long before I ended up getting hired in the Preservation Hall touring band, the Mercy Harper's band. Because a good friend of mine, a piano player, Sing Miller, he passed away. And so I replaced him in that band. And I was in the touring band for about 7 years, I think. We were out on the road all the time.
Did you go back to Chicago and brag any? Like, this is what I'm doing.
I went to Chicago with the show, and met my old boss
that's
there.
right, yeah.
I met my old boss there. He came to the show. So see what I'm doing. Then he finally said, "Oh, you must be pretty good. I thought you were just an amateur, when you worked for me."
I want to let you go.
So that was good. And then with the whole band, that took up most of the time. I played twice a week at the hall when we were in town, and then we traveled mostly in the States. But we did do some out of town. We did do some European gigs too, and we not with Percy because they didn't want to do those long. But later on, when the band was getting replaced with some younger musicians, we started doing tours to other places. Like we went to Greece twice.
Wow.
And we went to Israel a couple of times.
Wow.
And all kinds of places. We worked. And the last big job I did with Preservation Hall, as like sort of like a full-time job, because I continued even after I was no longer in the touring band and it was replaced by other people. The band sort of changed. I still played at Preservation Hall.
Mm.
So I would still had the local jobs, and I would occasionally go out with one of the other Preservation Hall bands because they had several bands. You know.
So you were doing more touring than you were here in New Orleans.
Yeah, at that time, yeah. And I was kind of glad when that ended because I wanted to be home more because in the meantime I had gotten married too.
I see.
Yeah. So I really wanted to be home more and not be on the road so much. But it was such a, it was so much fun touring with the Preservation Hall band.
Sure, I can
It
imagine.
was really a good job, so so I hung in with it. And the last really big jobs I did with them was we went to Mexico twice.
Wow.
And we stayed 2 months each time.
Wow.
That was really great. I think that was the greatest job I ever had in music.
Really? Tell me why.
Yeah, because we were hired by a person, a very rich sort of billionaire guy, the guy from England. His name was Goldberg, I think his name, Goldberg or something. He was one of those big investors. He used to own grocery store chains in England, and then he became a big stock market manipulator. He owned, all kinds of silver and gold, and he was just extremely wealthy, So yeah, so he had this huge estate in Mexico on the Pacific coast between Acapulco and what was the other town? Anyway, it was in that area, but it was not in the city. It was out in the sticks, And he owned this huge waterfront property. It was enormous. He even had wild animals and.
Wow.
It was like, I tell you, it was so big that when you came to the gate, the guarded gate, it was another 20 minutes before you got to the house.
Wow.
Because we didn't stay there, obviously. We stayed in, the first year we went down, we stayed at a sort of a beach resort. One of that, or completely contained kind of beach resort, and we didn't like it that much because we were stuck there.
Sure.
We never got to, because we didn't play that much, you see, because we played basically for his dinner parties, and there was no other audience. There was just a few people, The only big gig we played was New Year's Eve, when there was a lot of people. The rest of the time it was private events, just a few people, and we played for the dinner and the cocktails, and we only played maybe twice a week.
Wow.
Sometimes once a week. The rest of the time we were off.
A big letdown from the rest of what
It was
you
like
were doing.
a great vacation, great paid vacation.
Yeah.
So it was a fantastic job. So we every day we had to make ourselves available till noon. And at noon they will let you know whether you're going to play or not.
Oh, wow.
At noon you're told you're off. Then you can do whatever you want the rest of the day. So we spent a lot of time on the beach, and that was that was 2 months, and then we came back. They picked the season when there was no rain, which is like January to March, and the first gig is New Year's Eve. And so the second year, because we said we didn't like it being stuck in that resort, we wanted to be able to get around a little bit, particularly if we have many days off, So they put us in a little village, Isla Mojares. It was a very nice small village, and they put us in a hotel there, in a very nice hotel that had apartments, and it was right on the ocean. Fantastic place. And then we could go, we had a day off. Yeah, you could take the bus into the nearest town. There was a fairly good-sized town not far from there, maybe half an hour on the bus. You could go in and enjoy the Mexican life, So that was really wonderful. That second year was really great. We really had a wonderful time there. So, and I got myself a little kayak. I was out there paddling around every day. It was just fantastic. So that was really the great job. And then after that finished, then I wasn't working anymore with the touring band. Shortly after that, the band sort of changed. And
It must have been around 80 then.
that was in 1985 I came back to New Orleans. Yeah, it was in the 80s. I started doing a lot more on my, after I stopped touring with the Preservation Hall Band, which I had to be sort of available to them all the time.
Sure,
you know.
yeah. You did.
I started booking my own tours in Europe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I started going to Europe every summer. I would bring different groups. And I've been doing that every year ever since, actually.
Wow.
But except for the last couple of years.
Yeah,
I've been
COVID.
doing it. Yeah, the COVID. And I may have missed 1 year every now and then. But I did a lot of tours in Europe. And I would go to the Ascona Festival in Switzerland every year.
Wow.
That was a nice gig. That is not really running right now. And we did tours to Sweden, England, everywhere. It was great.
How was the
And I would bring some of those girls from the show with me sometimes, the singers, you know.
How was the Mob Loss bringing you, my motherland, bringing me back to?
Oh yeah, that was
going
fun.
back to Sweden.
Yeah, that was fun too. That was fun too. Yeah, the first time I went back to Sweden was in 1972, and that was with the New Orleans Joymakers. I had been away for 7 years. That was the first time I went back.
Time to
Yeah,
go
that was a
home.
great homecoming. That was really fantastic. Yeah. So that's basically what I've been doing. And when I came back from New York, and after I was finished with Preservation Hall, I started working at the Riverwalk down here
Oh,
with a
wow.
strolling band. It was
Wow.
me and 3 other guys. It was a
How did you
bass
like
band.
that?
Yeah, I did that for about 15 years. Can you believe that?
Oh my
First it was
goodness.
every day.
Wow.
I was playing the banjo.
Yeah.
Banjo, drums, and 2 horns. And we strolled around and played for the shoppers. We did that, we did that for a long time, every day. It was a full-time job for a number of years, and then eventually turned into a weekend job. And eventually it kind of petered out. Because the mall was sold several times.
Sure.
So we haven't done any jobs for in recent time. Jamie used to play with me sometimes at the River.
Really?
Yeah. And they were, in recent years, when it wasn't so much business at the mall anymore, and they had a third owner, they didn't hire a band on the regular basis, but they would send us out to special events. So we would often go and play for kids somewhere, or Christmas parties and things like that, or Christmas parades.
Mm.
We were still doing that up till the virus. We're still doing
Oh,
occasional
you were? Wow.
job for them, yeah. They're not on a regular basis.
Sure.
But I didn't want to really do it on a regular basis anymore, because I'm working here now.
Now I'm about to get
Yeah.
personal into your life.
Yeah.
Does the city of New Orleans pay you
The mall?
to do that?
No, that was paid by the mall.
Oh, I
By
see.
the mall,
Uh-huh.
yeah, the mall paid us.
Oh, I know.
It was a
someone
very
had-
nice job. We had a great relationship with all the merchants there and everything.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, it was a fun job for a long time. So that finished, and then I hadn't really been playing banjo jobs so much since then. Occasionally I play. I actually played one a few weeks ago.
Really?
Yeah, I hadn't played the banjo. I had to get it out of the closet and practice. Yeah, I played a gig with Wendell Brunius. It was for Preservation Hall. It was an opening of a new hotel.
Wow.
He just played the
Congratulations.
Yeah, we played for a cocktail party.
Yeah,
That was
that's
nice.
fine.
Yeah.
Whatever the gig, it doesn't matter.
And I'm playing tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm playing at Preservation Hall.
Oh,
No, not tomorrow.
congratulations.
Sunday. I'm
Sunday.
playing there. Yeah.
Really?
I've done a few gigs at Preservation
About what time?
It's from 5 to 8:30.
Well, I may have to
Yeah.
get my
It's 3 different sets. And that the times are very different from what they used to be. You know, it used to be 8 o'clock at night.
Right.
Now it's early.
Yeah.
Early. And limited seating. I
Oh,
think.
it is?
Yeah, it's limited seating.
Oh,
I think eventually they're going to open it fully, but they're slowly opening up.
I'll have to get there early so I can come.
Yeah. This is the first time I'm playing one for the public. I played a few other ones there, but they've been for private events.
Hmm.
You know. So yeah, I've done a few little gigs. I played for the Nickel Dance a couple of weeks ago.
Oh.
And so I've been doing a few little gigs, but not much. I've mostly just been playing at the piano at home by myself.
I don't want to get into the next set of questions without, with leaving this story. I mean, I love it. This is exactly what I wanted.
What is pretty
was
much
the history here.
I think we more or less covered the whole story. I'm trying to think of what else we've done. You know, we've been in movies and we've done other things too, all interspersed all during this time. You know, it's a lot of things different things we've done.
Well, brag on your movies then. What movies?
Well,
have you done?
we did the soundtrack to a movie called Pretty Baby.
Really?
Did you see that?
Congratulations. Yes, I have.
Yeah, yeah. That was
Very
Louis
nice.
Mal.
Yes.
Yeah, that was actually direct and orchestra in that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because they wanted period music from that. And I already had the music written pretty much. I only had to write a couple of new ones for him because it was already arranged. And yeah, we did some other movies that were less successful. And yeah, that's it.
I've been trying to tell our listening audience on Facebook and all the different places that they follow me on my blog and whatnot, that you are just really the man. I mean, you have really seen a lot in this business, in the jazz business.
It's been a great experience, and I had the chance to play with a lot
Imagine what
great
you've done.
musicians. Yeah, the biggest experience was really playing with the old guys. You know,
And
when I
that's what
first
Jamie
came
said,
in, that
too.
was really the biggest experience because you feel a connection with the real pioneers, you know.
Sure.
That was really enjoyable, being around those guys and learning from them and playing with them. That was a lot of fun. And it was not for money, it was just for fun.
Sure.
Yeah, because when we first came here, we just came here. Actually, I came here mostly to listen to the music. I didn't even think I was going to be a professional musician.
Right.
I didn't come here to make a living. I came here to hear those guys. And then I just kind of lucked up falling into the whole scene.
Well, I think you did very well for yourself.
Yeah, I can't complain. It's been a real good thing all along. And meeting George Bach and getting involved with him and other people in the record business too. It's been a real great experience. Yeah.
But how many concerts would you say pre-COVID?
Pre-COVID, I was generally playing twice a week at the Palm Court, once a week at the Preservation Hall, and that would sometimes be more days. I was regular on one day, but they would also add me on days when other people take off. I was like a sub guy.
So you're talking about
maybe
150 some plus.
I would probably do like every week. I would do probably 5 or 6 jobs.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah. I used to do a lot more.
And then, while you were
I
on
can't
tour,
handle that now. I mean, I used to work at the Riverwalk all day and then go play at night.
And then go play at night,
Yeah.
sure.
But then I didn't have this job.
Kind of sort of in your own way, tell me about George Buck's interaction into your life.
Oh yeah, I met George very early when I first came to New Orleans because he did not live in New Orleans, but he used to come down here. He used to come down here with these other two fellows I mentioned to you, Leonard Brackett and Sonny Baggett. They used to come down together, all three of them. They used to drive down here. And at one point they actually had an apartment down here, so whenever they come down, they would have a place to stay. Yeah, they would come down here regularly several times a year. So I met George very early, probably, 1965 or 66, around that time. So I've known him for a real long time.
Yeah, you have.
Yeah, and I didn't get involved with his label particularly till much later. No, I did. The first couple of things I did for George, I produced some recordings for him of local groups. And that was really the first time I did anything for him. And then of course, when he moved here, which is about 30 years ago now, I think. When he moved here, then I got to know him more because I also knew his wife as well.
Nina.
Yeah, I had met her before through her previous husband, Sam Remington, who I met here in New Orleans. And in fact, I met Nina and Sammy in the 60s because they came to America and they came to New Orleans. I'm not sure exactly what year, but it was some. Could have been 1966, 67, 68, somewhere in there. They came down here and they spent some time here and they were thinking about moving here.
Well,
yeah, they came from England, because that's where they're from. they were thinking of possibly staying here in New Orleans. But at that time, it must have been early. It must have been maybe 1966 because none of us was really working.
Sure.
I remember that now. We were just playing jam sessions. So we didn't have any jobs. We didn't care, but we didn't have a wife and kids. His first daughter was just born then. She was just a baby, yeah.
Wow.
And so they needed money and they needed a job. And Nina was going out doing waitressing and stuff, you know, working around here. And Sammy wasn't really getting any gigs, and neither were we. But we didn't care. We were here for partying and having a good time.
Janet.
So yeah, so he decided, no, I got to get a job. I need a regular job. So he got an offer up in. He was in Minneapolis. He went to replace Butch Thompson, who was in the Army or Navy, whatever. He was the piano player in the band, the Hall Brothers band. He went up there and played with them. And then he also went to Connecticut. He ended up, actually, I'm not quite sure about all that, but he ended up in Connecticut playing with Bill Bissonette's band. And so that was more of a full-time job. You know, they played, they had their own club, so they worked quite a lot. And so they stayed up there, Nina and Joe and Sammy. So I did not see them anymore now for a long time.
Oh wow!
Yeah. And then eventually, you know, when Nina got divorced from Sammy, and she got a job working for George Park. That's how she ended up over here, and then they ended up getting married.
Sure. Yeah.
And they got married here in New Orleans, actually. And then they were living in Decatur, Georgia then.
Was that in the 80s?
That was, yeah, that would have been in, yeah, that would have been in the 80s. And they came here, and they had been in Decatur, Georgia before, which is now where George's son lives now, in that house. They gave him that house. They moved here, and they bought property here. They bought a house on Ursuline Street. They bought several other houses around town, and they bought this building and the building next door too, which they later sold, and several other buildings that they don't have anymore. So they got involved in, and George, you know, George was in the radio business.
Right.
So he had a radio station here in New
In the
Orleans.
early 40s, right?
Yeah, he started way back on that, yeah. No, not the early 40s, I think later than that. He started a record label in 1949.
Ah.
So I think the radio station came a bit later. He had a radio station in Columbia, South Carolina. That's where he was when I first met him in the 60s. He was in Columbia. And then later on he was in Atlanta. He was in Florida. He's been around a lot. He moved around. He was buying up stations all over the place.
Wow.
He was a very astute businessman, and he would buy up stations.
And record labels.
Yeah, but that was his hobby.
I see.
He didn't do that to make money. To make money, it was his radio station. And he would buy up stations that were not doing well, and he would change their format, and they would do really well, and he would sell them at big profits. So he made a lot of money out of that. That's what he was able to. Of course, when he first started his label in 1949, it was on a shoestring. You know, he could only afford to record one session, and then it was years before he could record anything else.
Yeah, right.
But once he got successful in the radio business, he could put all of that money into the record company. He was basically funding the record company.
He was using his head, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was funding a record company, and he started recording a lot more. He was recording in New Orleans even before he moved here. He would do sessions. He would come down here and do sessions, and then put them out. And he would start buying up labels too. He bought up a lot of different labels. And so that's in a nutshell what he did. And then he came to New Orleans and opened up his office here.
I don't know if I read somewhere in the Jazzology magazine, and by the way, at the end of the interview, we'll scroll on how you can become a member of Jazzology, and we'll run the contact information for Lars. But I read somewhere, I thought I did, that George started, and it might have not been here, it might have been in another place, but he started the first recording studio that was recording in stereo. Am I right in saying?
No, that's not right. He actually never had a recording studio till he came to New Orleans.
Came here.
Yeah.
Did this one record in stereo?
Oh yeah, but this was, everybody was doing stereo by that
Oh, it
time.
was?
Oh yeah.
It was
Yeah.
just not mono then?
No,
Oh,
no. But when he first came to New Orleans, he didn't have a studio. He would use local studios. When he first moved here, he used local other studios. Then he got a studio here much later. So the record company was here for quite a while before he had a studio here. That was created later. But of course, George recorded a lot of stuff before he even had his own studio. He would use other people's studios. And he also recorded in other cities. He recorded in New York, of course. His first recording was made in New York.
wow, I didn't know that. No.
He was living in Elizabeth, New Jersey then. That's where he's from. And then he also recorded in Atlanta quite a bit. When he was in Atlanta all that time, he recorded quite a few sessions there. In fact, he was running a club there for a while, a jazz club in Atlanta.
Interesting.
Yeah, so yeah, he did quite a bit in Atlanta. By that time, his record business has really gotten quite big.
What can we do to promote it more, in your opinion?
Oh, I don't really know. That's
The
a difficult
CDs
question.
are fiddling
They
away.
they are disappearing. You know,
Downloads or
I saw the report from last year's sales, and it turned the streaming is now over 80% of the market,
really.
and the actual physical products, which is LPs and CDs, is less than 10%.
Really?
It's a very small. It's really gone down. Yeah.
Wow.
But we offer downloads of all our material too.
Mm.
We offer downloads and streaming, and that's a big part of our business nowadays. And of course, with the COVID, everything kind of died. The
Sure,
sales died,
yeah.
but they'd already started dying before that. CD sales.
Really?
Oh yeah. Fortunately, we are able to make profits other ways because we own so much material that we are able to do licensing to other companies. Like right now, I'm licensing 30 CDs to a Japanese company.
Wonderful.
And we already licensed 50 to them a couple of years ago. So we're doing that, and we're licensing to, like this statement I just got now, this is from a Canadian company that offer high definition downloads. It's probably something you never heard of.
No, I haven't.
That is,
really,
you know,
really
because regular downloads are a bit like MP3s. They are,
Right.
you know, they're not high quality sound. They don't sound as good as a CD even.
You're right.
Yeah. So with this company, they offer high definition downloads and they charge a lot more for it. And he's licensed quite a bit from us. I think about 20 CDs or so.
Wonderful.
So far.
Wonderful.
So and he's getting more. And then the other one thing that we do, we also have some European distributors too that buy CDs and LPs. But that's not a lot of money. We also do licensing to movies and television.
Wonderful.
And that is actually a very good income. But that's far in between. That doesn't
Sure.
happen that often.
Sure.
But when it does happen, it can be very good. So we recently did a very good one with Netflix for a movie called Ma Rainey's Black Bottom.
I saw it.
You
Excellent.
saw it, yeah.
Excellent.
We
Excellent
happen to own a couple of songs that they used in that movie.
It was a fine movie.
Yeah,
Fine.
so we were able to get a big payout for that, that was last year, and that made up for all the poor sales last year.
And to be honest with you, I think we're going to start seeing more and more of these type of movies come out because of the hunger of history.
Mm-hmm.
Bessie Smith,
Mhm.
the movie just launched last year, if
Yeah.
you know, if not year before.
Mhm.
And Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, that was an excellent movie.
Mhm.
I just saw something on the story of Storyville,
Mhm.
and I don't know if you had any music in that or not.
No.
But it was a fascinating show.
Oh, okay.
Because, I mean, these are stories, these are shows that you don't get anywhere else. You have to
Right.
come to New
Yeah.
Orleans. You have to focus in on New Orleans to get the show. You know.
Yeah, so that keeps us going. And we actually also own some popular type of music, you know, that when George bought up some of these bigger companies, he bought a couple of big companies. One is called World Broadcasting, which was a company, it's not really a record company, but it's a company that recorded a lot of music. And they recorded and they sold these big discs. They're about that big. And you have to have a special turntable to play them. They are called radio transcription discs.
Wow.
And we own thousands of those. We haven't got them all here yet. They're still up in Decatur, Georgia. I have to
So Katrina didn't get anything?
No, that didn't get damaged. But we did lose a lot of stuff in Katrina.
I heard.
Oh,
I don't even want to talk about those.
Yeah.
Just tell our listening audience
why
that is such a tragedy. How many did you lose?
In
the warehouse?
I don't know. I know George knew how much it was, but I wasn't working here then, so I don't know how much there was.
I heard from Jamie there was about 300,000
easily.
pieces.
There was LPs and there was CDs, both down there, and they lost that. Yeah, they lost a lot of that. But so when George bought this, so these transcription companies like World, which is a very large one, and George spent a lot of money buying that company. They have they supplied these discs to radio stations in the old days.
Wow.
This is before there were tape recorders. This is back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s.
Wow.
And those discs were used at radio stations to play music in between programs.
Oh,
and they recorded lots of great artists: Duke Ellington, Count Basie, you know, Harry James, Benny Goodman. And we issued a lot of that stuff. We bought that company and we have released a lot of it, most of the big band. But we also, when we bought that company, we also got a lot of pop music, which George obviously has not released because he didn't care about pop music.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But we have started to release some of that because it's a good income. Like we put out Shirley Horn for one.
Oh, wow.
She's one of our best sellers. And the other one is Peggy Lee.
Peggy Lee. Yeah, sure.
We have recordings of Peggy Lee. And when we put those out, that was our biggest seller. And George never put it out.
Because he never had thought Peggy Lee, of all people.
And so that sold really well. And we done really well on it as downloads as well. And we license it to movies and to all kinds of people. Because she recorded mostly for big labels, you know, Capitol, but our recordings are unique recordings because they're not part of her normal recordings that came out of the big label.
Yeah.
So they're unique, and also because we own the rights to those, we can license them cheaper than the big labels. So we can give a better deal to a movie than if they were going to Sony or something.
Yeah.
So we have a bargaining power there. So that's been very good. So now we're thinking about putting out Doris Day.
Oh, yeah.
We have some nice recordings.
That makes sense.
That's going to be one of our next ones. And Patty Page.
And Patty Page,
Yeah, we have a whole bunch of recordings with them that we've never done anything with.
Yeah.
So we're going to put those out. And we also have a lot of gospel music too, gospel quartets. We have lots of that.
Really?
Yeah, lots of gospel quartets, and we have some country music too. So we're going to put some of that out. It's not, although that's not really what our normal customers want, but we can sell that mostly as downloads.
Yeah, absolutely.
We might not put any CDs out, but we put out downloads. So I'm digging into all that now. So in fact, I'm going to have a lot of this disc shipped down here from Decatur because we still have about 30 huge boxes up there with those transcription discs. So I need to have them shipped down here to New Orleans.
A lot of history yet.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff in there too that we're not going to release because it's not even commercial. It's just very dated. You know, symphony orchestras, military orchestras, and stuff like that.
But a lot of that is still...
Some people might want it, but we'll see. If we see any big names in that, we might dig in and put it out. Somebody contacted us a while back, and he said, I understand that you own this wind quartet, this classical wind quartet. I said, what do you mean? But he said he was on the audiophile label. That's another label that we bought. But we didn't know that there was some classical music on that label, you know. And I don't think we even had the tapes. Yeah, we did have the tapes. We did find them after he told me what it was. Found it, so he bought the rights to put those out.
Really?
Out of the blue, yeah, it was Chicago Brass Quintet or something like that. Yeah, totally weird. We would have never even thought of
It's
issuing that.
amazing what kind of music
Yeah.
people are just, you know.
Well, what happened when George buy up some of those bigger concerns, there's a lot of byproduct that comes along with
Sure.
the jazz, you see.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Get the potatoes with the meat.
Yeah, so it's been an interesting job here going through that and digging through stuff. And we're still doing that. We're still digging through stuff.
Musician you've ever played with?
Oh,
Dizzy
gosh.
Gillespie or one of the higher?
I actually played with Dizzy Gillespie.
Did you?
Yeah,
Oh, my
in New
goodness.
York when we were doing a late show at the Village Gate. After the show, we did a little, like midnight show or something with the band from the show, and we had at that time Jabba Smith was playing trumpet with us, and because he took the job. Because the trumpet player from New Orleans didn't want to move to New York. He had a day job here too, as well. That was Lionel Furbo's. So we got Jabba to do the job. So Jabba was playing that night. Now Jabba was a very famous trumpet player in the 1920s, you know, and Dizzy Gillespie was a big admirer of Jabba, you know. He thought Jabba was one of the greatest. So when he heard that Jabba was playing at the river,
He wanted to go.
he came by and he said, "Do you mind if I sit in?" Yeah, and I had completely forgot about it, but somebody posted it on Facebook, a picture of it, of me, and I saw Jabba, Dizzy at the end, sitting there with his trumpet, and Orange, and I could see the back of me on the piano.
Oh my goodness.
I completely forgot that.
Oh wow.
But yeah, lots of people, when Jabba was playing with us, a lot of the trumpet players from New York would come to the show just to meet Jabba. Because
Wow.
they thought he was one of their heroes back there in those days. I remember, Buck Layton came there, and trumpet players, Roy Eldridge came there. Roy Eldridge was kind of similar to Jabba in the early days, similar style, you know. They were real technicians of the instrument. But Jabba had tremendous chops in those days when he was young, you know. He could hit all kinds of stuff on the trumpet. And but he was actually one of the greatest guys I ever played with.
Really?
Yeah. Although he did not have the chops anymore at that age, he had amazing facility on the instrument. He could literally play anything. Anything you throw at him, he could play. He has such a fantastic ear.
Wow.
And he was just amazing. Yeah, he really amazed me. One time we were playing a gig here. He was down here in New Orleans for a while, you know.
Wow.
And I was playing with the ragtime orchestra, and he came and started playing along with it without looking at the music. And I said, "This guy's got to be the biggest genius in the world."
My
You know,
goodness.
you don't play ragtime without looking at the music. No, it's unbelievable. Yeah, he was really unbelievable. And we did a nice tour with him in Europe too. In fact, you can see it on YouTube.
Really?
If you put in Jabba in France, playing at the Antibes Jazz Festival. It's a very nice shot there of the band with Jabba. Also was a great singer. He was a wonderful singer, and he wrote some very nice songs too. We did one of his songs in the show.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Wow.
And that was one of, actually, because Jabba was a veteran from the 20s, and being in the show, the rest of us were young people, he really stood out as something, a relic from the past, you know. So he got a lot of write-ups from the show, and we featured him on 2 songs. And that went over super big, you know. Unfortunately, he ended up getting a stroke and he couldn't continue playing. Yeah. Yeah, he was one of the geniuses that I played with. Yeah. I met many other ones there. You know, I met Earl Heinz. I was involved with a recording session with Earl Heinz here in New Orleans when I was writing some music for him, for the band, because he was using a local band and they needed some music for the song. So I got hired to write write some of the music for us. So I was able to sit there and watch him during the whole recording session.
Oh, wow.
He was just unbelievable on the piano too. That was really something to watch.
I hate to leave. I don't.
Another great one was Doc Cheatham.
Oh,
which
wow.
I had a chance to play with quite a bit and record with. And I also took him with me to Europe on one of my tours in Europe. And he was a great guy too, great player, wonderful musician.
I know these are memories that you won't ever forget.
Another great one that just come to my mind now that you mentioned, guys that I played with, was Franz Jackson from Chicago. And also an old veteran saxophone and clarinet player that was in Fats Waller's band and lots of big bands. He was an arranger. I took him on several tours to Europe, and he was really a fantastic player too. I could literally play anything. And he was a very interesting guy to be around because he knows so much about music. Yeah, he was a fascinating guy. In fact, he was playing on Clark Street in Chicago when I was in Chicago. He had a band, but I couldn't go because I wasn't old enough.
You weren't old enough.
Yeah, and he had all this
no.
he had all these great veterans playing with him. What I would love to have heard, you know. And they had another club there called the Jazz Unlimited in Chicago. If you heard of that one, that was a famous club. And they actually used a lot of New Orleans players up there, came up there and played. Freddie Coleman played there, Thomas Jefferson. And when I was in Chicago, actually, I met some of those New Orleans guys because they came to the store where I worked. They came by to say hello, and you know they knew Bob Kessler because he recorded jazz too. But I wasn't able to go hear him, unfortunately. Yeah, I met a lot of great guys. And in New Orleans, I also met some very nice piano players. One of them was Rosa Sykes, the great blues piano player who lived there for a while. I got to know him quite well. I had a chance to go to his house and hear him play. And that was really a wonderful experience too. Yeah, I got to meet a lot of great guys.
Well, is this one of these big?
Yeah, that's one of those discs.
Oh, wow. That thing is
I'll show you what it looks like. This is
Is it 78?
No, it goes on like plays like an LP. This
Wow.
This one is pretty much ruined, and they only play on one side. And this is this is a Glassmaster, and we're going to try to clean it up. Oh. We bought some solutions to try to fix it.
Sure.
But yeah, that's what they look like. And so they're really like an LP, you see. You got lots of tracks on it. But you have to have a special turntable and a special needle to play. Yeah, so on vacation right now. So here is the actual recording studio.
Oh, yeah, I remember it now.
So you've been here before. Yeah.
Oh, very nice.
And this is we bought this right before the storm. It's a very old tape recorder that plays old tapes, and it's been refurbished. And that's this big turntable, and this is the old equipment. We used to have a great big control board that went all the way across here before, but we got rid of that because we're doing mostly digital recording.
And just one small thing takes the whole...
They took place of that. We sold that to some guy up in New Jersey who refurbished those things. Because some people like these old things, you know.
Old
like
analog.
Yeah. So that's it. That's the studio. And in there is the actual recording room.
There's been a lot of history to walk through these doors.
So this is the actual studio.
Oh my goodness. How very cool.